What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast.
You mean we weren't recording all that? Oh, sorry.
No,
we weren't recording all that gold?
No.
Oh, man.
No, I feel like it would be kind of rude to kind of just bring you in right away. And it's like, hey, everything you're saying right now is recorded.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Go for it.
Yeah, we'll probably just leave this in or cut this in at the beginning. But yeah, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's podcast. This is episode 16. And as always, I'm joined by Tommy Stiles. And this week we are very fortunate. We have IFBB Pro, prep coach, owner of West Coast Iron, big Ron Partlow with us. What's up, Ron? Thanks for joining the show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. You know, it's funny just hearing you introduce me as a pro, because I don't even really, I don't think of myself as a bodybuilder anymore, hardly. You know what I mean? So
yeah, look at that
pro.
Look at that backdrop. You got the guitars, the bike, the bucket hat. That's an IFBB Pro all day.
There you go. I know. It's funny.
Yeah, no, I thought about it, and I had to, and I would be remiss if I didn't include that, especially with the journey that you had putting into it. I mean, I feel like within bodybuilding circles, you have kind of a standout journey of perseverance. Like you and John Meadows come to mind in that same frame of thinking.
Well, I've had a lot of people say that over the years, and I appreciate that for sure. I was just one of those kind of guys that just wasn't going to quit, I guess. One of those guys that, I was like teetering on that point where I was like, you don't want to be the guy that went on too long, tried too long, you know what I mean? And so I was 39 when I turned pro, and I always told myself I would never compete past 40. So that's all it was. I turned pro, and I was going to do a show the next year as a 40-year-old, but then I blew my quad. So I was like, well, I guess I missed the cutoff there. That's all good. I got the one pro show appearance and the pro card and all that stuff. That's fine. And, went and did other things. But, that promise I kept to myself to not go past 40. There was probably like a promise I made when I was like 31. I was probably already 31.
I just made the same kind of deal with myself as I turned 30. I was like, okay, I'll do this till 40 max.
Yeah, I just sort of, and I just, the injuries, I was collecting injuries, and things weren't, the body wasn't able to keep up to the mind at a certain point, because I still had like I was still training like super fucking hard right up to the end. Like I remember getting ready for that last prep and like doing legs in like super hot summer in the gym that we were in. It was brutally hot back then. And I just remember like thinking, this is almost as bad as Arlington, Texas. Like this is, because we get really hot summers here in Vancouver. Like we get 100 Fahrenheit, and it gets real humid and all that stuff. We get these little hot spells, right? And they're always in the late summer when you're dieting for the fall show, right? So I remember that last prep. I remember thinking like, this is as hard as it gets. I think training.
Like, I'm about done with this now.
Yeah. I just remember thinking that I was really glad that I still had the drive to do it. But I was noticing the body was lagging. Like there's certain things I couldn't do that I wanted to do. I still wanted to do certain things that I couldn't do. And I was like, fuck, that's a problem. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just how it went at the end. But hey, it all turned out all right, So
yeah, that's kind of a good segue into, you have a highlight on your Instagram page that I pulled. I've actually had it as a photo on my phone since whenever you posted it on Instagram before, but part of it says it's called My 2 Cents, and it says the grind matters. It's the difference. I absolutely counted on it to matter. It was my only hope to ever turn pro. So I want to tap into that mindset that you had all the years grinding to get your pro card, and how taking second so many times reinstilled that mindset each year when you came back again. And then you can kind of touch on if you think that mindset is stronger or lower in today's bodybuilding scene, with social media being a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's based in, and like, hey, maybe this was a bad thing. Maybe this didn't help me. Maybe it was a hindrance, but I guess I got like, I always lacked belief in my talent. Like, I never believed I was talented at bodybuilding. I sort of considered myself lucky to have some genetic, like really good genetic things. Like, I see genetics as like an equalizer with like 20 different knobs on it. It's not just genetics, right? It's like shape, shoulder width, pelvis width, quad sweep. Does he have lower lats and big triceps? Does he have, funny looking pecs? Does he have good abs? Like, there's all these things that are good genetics. And I always knew that I had a couple of those knobs cranked. Like, I was super wide in the shoulders. I had a really, really crazy V taper, like for most part of my career. I wasn't like, I had pretty good legs for a tall guy. They weren't fucking crazy, but I remember I was at a point where, like, people would say, "Oh man, your legs are fucking awesome at this show." Like, so I had good enough legs. There was a lot of things I had that I was like, okay, good. I got those things, but I knew there was a bunch of things I didn't have. I never was delusional. I was always really, really hard on myself. And so I thought, if I have any hope of ever turning pro, I have to beat these guys that I see in the gym all the time that have all those boxes checked, like the fucking crazy arms. How many fucking guys have great arms and they don't even give a shit about competing?
Man.
Right. And you see them in the gym all the time, and you see them doing press downs, and they're talking to people, and it's like, and they're weekend warrior, bodybuilding fans, and they have great arms. And you're like, fuck, dude, like, I didn't have those. So I was always very aware of certain things that I was going to run into constantly that were going to be a problem. And I just knew that, like, I don't know, it was just something, I guess I believed from, watching sports, playing sports, what I was taught as a kid. But, there's a certain amount you can make up with hard work. And I just sort of just tried to, like, have that mentality. Dorian was obviously a huge factor too. I mean, that's just like immeasurable. Like the point in your life, I don't know, when you're like 14, 15, 16 years old, right? And you're really easily, like, not easily influenced, but you're really looking for direction in life. And so, like, that guy collided with Dorian Yates in the magazines. That I was exactly the right age. Boom. And it just made sense to me. Oh, just outwork everybody. So that was just kind of how that all started, I guess.
That's good to know the origin of it. And then how was it refined each time? Like, I mean, you get second one time, you get second 2 time, and like Canada's system, for our listeners who are probably mostly predominantly in the US, it's much harder to turn pro in Canada than it is the US. You guys pretty much have like the 1 or 2 shots a year.
Well, back then,
it was much different. And it was much different then.
Right.
Yeah.
It was much different. So yeah, man, like I caught a very, very, very difficult era to try to turn pro in. I ran into, like, and not saying I wouldn't say it's harder to turn pro in Canada, because technically the American shows were harder. Like the NPC Nationals and the US Mr. USA, those were always shows where we were like, holy shit, if you win those shows, like, you're probably going to do well as a pro your first year, win a show, and maybe go to the Olympia. Right. Whereas, like, turning pro in Canada was just difficult because we were so bottlenecked. Like, there's like 8 to 10 guys at any point in time that were good enough to turn pro, but there was one card a year. And so it literally takes a decade to get all those guys through.
Yeah.
And then by that point, there's 10 new really good guys.
Right.
And they're bottlenecked again. And so it's not that the caliber's higher, that it's not, it's not that the numbers are higher. It's just that the bottlenecking was so bad. Cause like, at the NPC nationals, you got every class would get a pro card. That would let a bunch of pressure off the system. Right. Like it's like a pressure valve, you get rid of those light heavies and middleweights that are fucking incredible, that keep winning every year and blocking everyone else from getting to the overall.
Yeah.
And you can turn all those guys pro and get them out of there, and you get a new middleweight champion or a new light heavyweight champion or a new heavyweight champion. Right. Whereas in Canada, every year you'd have all these good champions, and then there was one card and there was no other show. So, everybody but one guy comes back the next year. Right. And it just gets really bottlenecked. And that's how it was for like a while. They started doing a second pro card where they would pick a second card from the overall. And I mean, that helped a bit. But it was just a tough era. I'm really proud of all the guys I got to compete against. I got to compete against all the coolest, like, Canada just had such a great group of guys come out of the era I was in. Like I competed against Frank McGrath and Fuad and Ben and Antoine and Mike Van Wyck. And I competed against all these guys, guys that were like legends in Canada, like Dan Dufresne. If you're a board guy from the 2000s on the muscle boards, you remember Dan Dufresne, like just a wild time, so it was a lot of fun. I knew Greg Kovacs, Kovacs, Kovacs would come up to me Kovacs would come up to me at the show and be like, "Oh, you look fucking great, good luck." And like, he'd like, cause he was always at the nationals every year watching. So it was like, just really cool,
We actually talked about that. Tommy and I talked about that era and some of the names that you like consistently went against. And I thought it would be interesting to hear your perspective on like who stood out to you the most as a fellow competitor, like whether it was somebody that you stood with. I know you were always in the supers, or whether it was like, sometimes you're at a show and you see somebody, maybe they're in a different class, but you just see him walking around backstage and you're like, what the fuck? This guy looks like he's from another planet. So I would be curious to hear from you, like in your bodybuilding career, who was that guy for you that sticks out to you?
Yeah. I've had people ask me like, who's the best guy you competed against? And a few questions like that. I have great stories about all of them, and they were spread out over such a great era. Like I could tell a good story about every single one of those guys. I first saw Frank McGrath at the 2001 Nationals, and he was in the super heavyweights with me. And I saw him backstage and I went, holy shit, that guy is fucking really good, but he's not in shape.
Right.
And I went over to him and he wasn't talking to anybody, and he kind of looked like quiet. And I just walked right over to him. It was my second nationals. And I walked over to him and I was like, "Hey man, what's your name?" And he goes, "Frank." And I go, "What do you weigh?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm like 230 or something." And I was like, "Oh man, you got fucking crazy arms." Like his arms were just fucking crazy, but he was crazy. His whole body was crazy at that age. He was like 23 or something. And he was super nice guy, thickest Newfie accent I've ever heard. Like you hear him talk now and he's all like Americanized and, Canadianized, and, he sounds different, but back then he was like 100% Newfoundlander. So it's like the kind of I don't know if you guys know that accent, but it's a real different accent. Like you notice it. And I remember talking to him and he's a nice guy. And then after the show, he was pretty bummed because he placed like 7th or 8th or something. I can't remember. And I was in the top group of guys. So I was just chatting with him after, and he was pretty bummed. And I said, "Well, man," I go, "honestly, like you told me you were 230. If you were 220 and you were a heavyweight, you probably would have won the heavyweights because you just need to be leaner." And then my big mouth, he comes back the next year and he's like 227 shredded. as a super, and he beats me and gets the pro card. And
Comes
but we
back
always
with a vengeance.
come back because he just wasn't in shape, and he came back in shape, and it was just like impossible to compete against him, you know. So yeah, it was funny. But Frank was immensely talented. Like, and then like, he went down to Venice right after that and got signed by Animal and moved into Ed Connor's house, and that was it. He was like living in Venice. I was like, what the
Superstar.
fuck? It all happened at once. Yeah. You know, but that was to me at that time. Like, I remember seeing Frank and being like, oh, that guy's like, he's going to go to California and it's just all going to happen for him. I remember thinking that as I was looking at it backstage. I was like, that's exactly what you got to look like if you want to move to California and be a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But you know, they're all good, you know, they were all good.
You had mentioned that you have a story, like a good story about all those guys. Man,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of everybody that you just named for the most part. So I'd be happy to hear any of those stories that you got that you care to share. I mean, Ben Pekulski was a big inspiration for me. Like when I was coming up, you know, like of course Dorian always, but as far as like, you know, training and like biomechanics and stuff, Ben put out like a lot of free stuff when I was coming up that helped a ton when you couldn't afford a coach or whatever. So him and you know, obviously big fan of Fuad's too. So I'd be curious about what those stories sound like.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about Fuad. I remember it was 2006, we competed against each other, and I was in like really great condition. I was super excited because I'd never been that hard. I was hard as nails. I'd never been that dry. I was super excited. And I'd already been second a few times. Like I was going into my third second or something like that. And maybe fourth, I can't remember. And I saw Fuad, and I knew Fuad was coming because I'd seen him on the message boards, and he was posting all those blue locker pictures.
Yeah.
With the blue lockers behind him. And he had won the supers a year before, and I'd taken the year off. So he was like the defending champion, but he didn't turn pro. And so I was like, I got to beat Fuad. Okay, I can beat him. And I was like pretty prepared, and I believed I could beat him. And I saw him in the pump up room, and he looked really good, but he didn't look hard to me. Like he looked lean, but he didn't look hard, you know? And I was like, I think I got him on condition, because I had that super dry look where I was dry and hard as nails, just standing relaxed. And he just didn't look like that. He looked kind of soft. And I was like, fuck. Okay. And even like he was like, did some side laterals, and he didn't blow my mind, you know? And I was like, okay, he's big and lean, but I can beat him. And we walking down the stairs, and I even thought walking down the stairs, I thought he looked like he just wasn't hard. I just was like, fuck, you know? And we get backstage, and we're getting ready to go on, and we're all, you know, moving around, and he's standing right underneath this like pot light. And someone goes, hey, Fuad, give us a shot. And they go to take a picture, and he hits the most muscular, and every single thing on him just goes. And I realized he was just so full that he was like on the verge of spilling. But then when he flexed, it just went, and he looked fucking nuts. And I was like, oh shit, this can be tough. Fuck. Saw the pictures. He looked he looked way harder than I thought he was in person. It was weird. He looked great, but it's just a different look. Like, you know, some guys have that like busting look, and when they flex, it all just goes crazy. And it's, you know, your physique has all these different looks. And I just remember him that day. I remember not thinking he was hard. And then when he flexed, it just, I was like, shit. Okay. I wound up stacking to him, but yeah, you know, just stuff like that. And then he told me afterwards, he's like, I panicked a bit after prejudging, and I ate like 6 chocolate bars.
That's so on brand with him. Like if you listen to his podcast now, that's so on brand with everything that he said
he stood in front of the chocolate bar machine, and he just ate Mars bars. He ate like 6. He's like, fuck, I need to get fuller. Because it was like we were both like, we're battling, you know, like they were clearly moving us, and they, you know, moved everyone else. So it was just kind of a funny story. But
now he went on to win that class. Did he win the card?
Yeah, he got his card that year. Yeah. It was 06. Yeah.
So you lost to that point the best version of him. So no shame there.
Oh yeah. No, actually, like all those guys, that's kind of like, that's the same for all those guys. But yeah, it's just it's it's also funny to see how like all those guys are still around.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's been a few guys that won the Canadas that, you know, disappeared off the scene completely and, you know, don't even have Instagrams and stuff like that. But for the most part, like those guys all stayed in the industry, made a name for themselves, you know, it's which also like shows you like,
it feels like a big deal when you're the national champ, like you're the one guy that is representing essentially this entire
massive
a big deal to us. Country. Yeah.
Well, you know, we used to use the term Mr. Canada, you know, back in the early days.
Yeah.
Right? Win the Mr. Canada, you know, but it also goes to show you, like, if you look at all those guys that have the longevity, like Fouad's still around, Ben's still around, Frank's still around, you know, all those guys, Antoine's still around. He's going to the fucking Olympia. Like, all these guys are still around. So it goes to show you that to win, you also have to be really actually in love with the industry. And it really has to be something that you want to do for, you know, the rest of your life, figuratively.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's not like there's a long line of guys that won overall, you know, won pro cards and then, like, you know, just we're happy to just completely walk away. You know, most guys love the industry so much. They want to find a way to stay in it, stay relevant. And that's what it takes. So, you know, a lot of these young guys that ask, how do I win a pro card? I'm like, well, you have to want it that bad.
Right.
Like, you know, you have to, like, it has to be something you really, really want to do, you know?
Yeah.
We're going to run into those guys.
We've talked about on this show how, like, because we have a lot of new people, younger competitors, and we've kind of had the message that be prepared to give at least a decade to see if you're going to even turn pro. So how did that play into your mindset? Because I just remember your off-season eating stories, and I think as somebody who's had to put size on and still do, you know, taking multiple years off at a time between stage appearances, how did you go? Was there just not a pressure to be lean in the off-season so no one cared? Because now it just seems like everyone is so afraid to even let their body fat go 0.5% over a preconceived number.
It's so funny how that's changed. And I mean, to a certain degree, it's for the better. Like we got too fat, but there's an overcorrection, right? That's kind of the problem. And then the overcorrection got like stepped into with social media. So now it's like permanent. Like it can't recorrect itself because there's now this expectation.
No, it'll never go back.
Yeah. You know, it'll never go back. It can't go back. There's certain things that can't go back. Right. You know? So that's kind of part of the problem, but there was no pressure. Plus, like, I lived in Edmonton, Alberta for most of my bodybuilding career. So like 6 months of the year, you're wearing a hoodie or a winter jacket. So, and we used to laugh about how heavy we got and how much we could eat. And like I remember back, and I hate saying in the day, but it's not like we were fucking dinosaurs. We were all still taking the same drugs. But I remember, like, if you said to the boys, hey, it's all you can eat pizza after legs on Monday, everybody came. Nobody brought a fucking Tupperware dish or opted out. Like, you couldn't. Like, you're like, we do legs and then we go eat pizza. That's how it works. That is the way, you know? And that's just how it was. I remember those early years. And like, now it's like, if you, like, you know, have a group train and say, hey, we're going for pizza, there's like 3 guys that are like, oh, can we do some sushi? I want to keep it clean. And there's like another guy that's like, oh, I brought a meal, you know? And then one guy's like, oh, I'm just having whey. I'm going to eat when I get home, you know? Like, this is the conversations that we have now. They didn't used to happen at all. And we were still huge, and we were still squatting 5 plates. We were still fucking coming in big and ripped on show day, you know? So I don't know what to tell you.
Do you think there was more of an emphasis on just training as hard as you fucking can and then eating?
Well, yeah, I remember I said this before and everyone thought I was joking, but this was literally like something that was told to me was, if you're hungry, you're shrinking. That's like, I remember my buddy Eric. I got to give, if anyone happens to know who my buddy Eric is, who sees this, he's Eric LaRue, but he's a guy that taught me how to squat when I was a teenager. But he used to take me to all you can eat pizza. That's why I brought that up. But he said to me, he's like, well, if you're hungry, you're shrinking. Like, you're not allowed to be hungry.
Yeah.
Like, you're a bodybuilder. You don't get hungry ever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So like, if you felt hungry, you're like, fuck, I'm failing right now. Why do I not already have a bowl of cereal in my lap? You know? And it was just that sort of mentality. And it was just like that. Eat face off. And then when diet time comes, it was like hardcore diet. Like, okay, you're 6 weeks out. That means chicken and vegetables.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you pull your rice, you're 6 weeks out. It's not like, well, do I have to pull my rice or how do I look? It was just like, that's what you do. It's 6 weeks out. You pull your rice. You go to just chicken and fiber, protein and fiber.
The cutters go in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, protein and veg and a little bit of oatmeal for breakfast, maybe to get you through your day. You know, like that was how we dieted back then. It was like, you know, but because you got to get the 50 pounds off.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like I said, it doesn't mean we were doing things better, but I just think that there was an overcorrection.
Yeah.
Well, I think you could make an argument that it was better because we're kind of in the midst of like the death of the mass monsters. Like, there aren't guys that are just huge anymore. I feel like you're a total anomaly now. If you see guys that are, you know, anywhere near 300 in the off season, I feel like, so it's like just an entire shift across the industry. And I, you know, Tommy and I are kind of, I don't want to say the last of a dying breed. That's super arrogant, but it's like, we still have that as a goal. Like, we just want to be huge.
Right.
We just want to walk around the mall and be fucking huge.
Yeah.
And, you know, being that we, you know, Tommy and I are in a similar spot where it's like, we have to take these long, like, calculated off seasons. It's a funny comparison to hear like how simplified things were for you, where it's like, I'm just going to fucking squat till I puke. And then I'm going to go eat all you can eat pizza. And that's what got me to 300. Like, if I did that, my blood pressure would be 200 over 180 and I would just be fat.
Right.
I wouldn't be any bigger.
I think, like, I don't know. I mean, I remember there were lots of guys that were my size, like, and I mean, like, frame wise, you know, like when I was in high school, I wasn't a big guy. I was a taller, athletic guy, but I wasn't big. I was like, you know, like frame wise, I wasn't like a giant, huge guy, but I was putting muscle on at a rapid rate, you know, and I was just training and eating and eating and eating and eating. And, you know, I ate Wendy's every fucking day in high school, you know, like it was just, you know, there was no even the thought of watching what we ate. Like, if I got home from the gym and there was like 2/3 of an apple pie on the table, I'd just go, is anybody eating any of this? And if my dad's like, no, I'm done, I'm like, okay. And I would just eat the whole fucking pie. Like, you don't use a plate, like you eat the whole thing. Like, you eat everything. Like, where I was a farm kid, right? So I also had that farm kid thing, like you clean your fucking plate, like that sort of thing. So my mom would make a lemon pie and then she'd make a lemon pie for me. And that was how I grew up. Like, okay, you know, Ron wants his own pie. So I made 2 pies. Like, my mom was fucking awesome. But I had a farm kid support system for like, food was supposed to be eaten. You're supposed to eat up. You know, my dad would tell me, have some more potatoes, you know, like that sort of thing. So we were just, yeah, like the programming was there, you know. I remember, you know, like a common meal for me when I was in my early 20s was to cook like a 14-ounce steak on the barbecue and then eat a liter of ice cream. Like, that's a meal. What's wrong with that? All the protein.
It sounds like Fuad wrote that diet.
You know, like I would do that all the time, like a couple times a week.
Yeah. You
know, and just call it a meal. So you just stuff like that, you know, like you can't imagine if you punch that into MyFitnessPal.
Yeah,
like,
it would send you the little message. It's like, you're over your fats for the day.
A little high in sugar.
What numbers do you get back? I don't even know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just how we did things, and just everything was just, just feeding growth and, not allowing yourself to ever get behind on processing nutrients. Like these were things we thought, Yeah. So I don't know, but you're right. The number of guys I saw in the gym that had my size frame, I sort of thought why are they all not getting to 300? How come I'm getting to 300 and they're not getting to 300, and it wasn't the drugs, because I would always be surprised that I was like very commonly for a huge portion of the years I competed, I would always be the lower dose guy in a conversation. And I was always like antsy of hitting 1,000 megs. I'm like, okay, I'm at a gram now. Fuck, that's really pushing it, And then I started talking to these guys that were like, oh yeah, 2 grams of test and a gram of anabolics. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, fuck. I started to hear that all the time. And I was like, I'm not doing that, And so, yeah, the only other way you get to 300 is a lot of food.
Yeah.
Now, do you have like an average day of like at your biggest, what was like a big Ron Partlow eating day?
Well, the most I ever ate was when I worked with Chad Nicholls in 2009. And that's when I got to 330. Everybody
says this. Anybody that works with Chad, they're like, oh, hands down, the most food and the biggest that I ever was.
Yeah. If that's the route that if you want to just get big, like Chad said, he's like, Kate, first thing, I'll never forget him saying this. He's like, Kate, what's your previous off-season heavy? And I was like 320. And he's like, Kate, well, we eat till we're 330 then. Like, I don't even give a fuck how you look. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. I don't even need to see pictures from now until fucking February or whenever I start.
Oh, that wouldn't fly now.
He's like, just eat. And I'd send him pics once in a while, and he'd be like, Kate, keep eating. And my weight just went like that. And then I remember like prep was coming up, like it was getting there. It was like, we were like 16 weeks out at one point. And I was like, I need to start dieting. And he's like, let's push it one more week. And I was really nervous about 15 weeks. I was like, okay. And then we hit 330. And he was like, there, that's what I wanted to see.
Now, let me ask you, would you say that was like your most productive off season that you've ever had? Like what was the end result then? Because the off season's really only half of it.
So my physique was different after that year. So I see my bodybuilding career in 3
pre-Chad and post-Chad.
That's one of the categories. I have my early years where I was like working away and I was coming in around in the 240s, and I did several, my entry level shows and I, won a few shows and got to nationals, and I placed second a few times. And then I took 2005 off and I came back in 2006, and that's the beginning of the second phase where I was coming in really, really conditioned, but I was still coming in like I always felt like I was a little flat. But I was real dry and shredded all the time. And then in 2009, I hired Chad, and then for every show, and then I worked with Aceto 8 times after that. But from the Chad year onward, I was bigger. I was in the 260s, pushing 270 on stage. So it leveled me up. That year with Chad, I definitely got bigger because my stage weight was like, that was when I broke into like the 265 range. And I was like, oh, okay, fuck, I'm definitely bigger,
Now, any tangible difference like in those two phases, like that 240-ish look to that 260 look, any negatives that you found? Like I've heard that some guys look back on their careers, and like Branch Warren is a good example of it, where he's like, I like my earlier look better than the bigger look. I think even Jay has said that, where he liked 01 compared to 09, right? So it's like, did the midsection grow or any negatives?
Yeah. So I felt like the year I worked with Chad was the first time in all those years of being, because I hit 300 pounds in 2001 for the first time. It was very Burger King and D-ball, but it was 300 pounds, right? Burger King and D-ball.
Put that on a shirt and sell it.
Yeah. Burger King and D-ball. Yeah. So from 2001 all the way to 2009, I'd been over 300 pounds every single year. I hit 320 several times and then 330. But the year I hit 330 and came back down, I felt like there was something different about how I controlled my abdomen. It was more difficult. I was noticing that I had to like think about it more. and like control it more. Cause I used to just be able to stand like carefree and I'd have flat abdomen. But I couldn't do that anymore. I was like, oh, I have to like pay attention to it. And I was like, fuck, that's what I just got my first dose of, abdominal change.
Sure.
And
Right.
I was very aware of it after that, but it was never quite the same. Never quite the same.
And
so there
that's just food or
it has to be. I was so full all year. Like, because Chad's meals were like, 12 ounces of steak and 400 grams of cooked rice, like that sort of thing. And like, 12 ounces of ground beef and 400 grams of cooked pasta. And so it was lots of food, a cheeseburger, fries, and a piece of chocolate cake was one of the meals that was on my diet like 4 times a week, so yeah.
So as a coach who's, you've been coaching for a long time and you've seen the progression, the addition of social media and like the paradigm kind of shift from we get too fat to now we're afraid to grow. How has that altered how you coach, knowing how you came up? Are you pushing guys that want to push, or because I'm sure with your name, you get guys that are like, hey, I want to bodybuild. And then you give them the plan and they see actually what it takes. And you're like, oh, just kidding. But you probably get a few who are like,
I often say this to almost every client. These guys don't want to eat what we ate. Like they want to eat clean. Everybody wants a diet. They want to stick to it. Like, I always have a rule. I would never ask a client to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Right. And, but when it comes to diet, off-season diet, I break that rule because they want to eat like they want that, like they really, really want to eat super clean all the time, which actually makes it easier to coach them. So it's not a bad thing. It's like, it's a good thing. It's a progression, but I actually have a hard time getting some of them to eat like calorie bombs, like I got some guys, they just don't eat restaurant food. Like they will not. And he's like, what can I do instead? And I'm like, can you cook like a massive fucking barbecue of burgers and eat them at home? Yeah, no problem. But they will not go out and eat a burger. I've got some clients like that. And you have to like work around them, because just say, go out and eat. That's not going to help. They're not going to listen to you. That's not how they're super obsessed with, which is like great. It was just a different programming. It's not that one is more serious than the other, because it's all based on their perception of reality, right? We believed that it was the way, and they believe that this is the way. So everyone's like working hard at what they think is the right way to do it. But I do like, the way we ate was just, like off season was more rounded. It was like, okay, if I get my protein, then the fats and carbs are just a total number of calories that I have to consume. So that'll be my daily minimum.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, they're very, very like structured about it. And everyone's got an app now. They're using the app, if you ask me how many grams of fat did you eat today, I would have said, oh, at least 100. Right. But now they're like 67.5, so just that sort of thing. But I mean, it's cool. It's cool if they want to take it this seriously. And obviously we've progressed a lot with our knowledge that we know that it's good to have like, really good control over how your body looks all the time and, all that stuff. But I do think people get, I'm worried about like, psychologically being too much of a basket case about food. It's not good. I'm a believer that there is such thing as going too far and being too focused on that shit, especially in the off season. So yeah.
Interesting. And then, so kind of segueing, like, with Tommy asking you about coaching, I wanted to hear from you about this topic, because you just said it, like you poured a huge chunk of your life into bodybuilding. And then with the injury, it's kind of like you were kind of told when it was over. I mean, you had your plan, like, okay, I'm going until 40, but it kind of, the rug kind of got pulled out from underneath you. So I'm always curious to hear from guys once they're post bodybuilding, because I just selfishly feel like I'm going to struggle with this. What was it like to lose that piece of your identity? Like I'd imagine putting that much, like you're walking around and like in your mind, your avatar almost is like, I'm a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Like first and foremost, I'm a bodybuilder. So
yeah,
I'd like to hear like your journey of how you manage that.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back on it now. So, 2016 blew the quad. So then, I'm really great when I have something to focus on.
Yeah.
So the quad injury actually just gave me something to focus on. So now I'm rehabbing my leg. Right. And so, I was never like, woe is me or anything like that. Like once I got going on the rehab, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my leg back. And then once my leg's back, we'll see how the legs look. And then maybe I'll, still do one more show. I might do one more round. Just got to get my leg back. And I was very focused and positive. But then we opened the gym and we opened the gym, and that just became a monster of a project. And I wound up, it didn't take long before my girlfriend said to me, she's Emily, she, observed as the gym took over my every single waking like thought. She was like, oh, you've just taken like contest Ron, like bodybuilder Ron, and you just dropped it on, and now it's business Ron, and that's how you do things. And I was like, I guess, because it was like thinking about the gym 24/7, all in. And then I realized, I was like, oh, without realizing it, it had just happened. The thing that I'd been told would happen, which is some of my good older friends said, when you're done bodybuilding, you're going to turn that drive onto something else and you're going to excel at it. And I was like, well, hope so, because that people would tell me that. And I'm like, well, hope so, and then I'm like, oh, fuck, maybe this is it. Awesome. And I just, let it ride. And we've just been, doing great ever since. So, sometimes I'm like, do you regret anything? I'm like, I don't even regret the quad tear, because without the quad tear, I might have not opened the gym with my buddies. And it's all been awesome.
And it's tough to regret something you didn't really have a choice in, right?
Nah,
it's not a decision you made.
Yeah, it was a good way to end. Fuck.
Yeah.
Gotta, you know what I mean? Like,
it's kind of noble. It's like a warrior getting taken out in battle one last.
Yeah, it's a poetic, it's a fitting ending for sure, where it's like you've just been in there beating the hell out of your body.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, we've had enough.
Yeah. And also too, honestly, that essentially what happened was, I developed some tendonitis in that quad tendon in like 2009. And, it had been a problem for years, and I had some years where it was worse and other years where it was okay. And it was always kind of bothering me. And then by, about 2013, it had developed into, I had it MRI'd, and they're like, oh, you got a bit of tendinosis in there. So you have some degenerative tendon, long-term sort of problems with that tendon. And I was like, fuck. And then 2016, it fucking popped off completely. So, it's not like how do I put it? It's not like I got in a car accident and it tore. It tore because I just fucking wore it out.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like,
and it's not like you fell off a horse or something. Like,
I didn't fall off a horse. Like, no, I actually tore it on a trampoline. Oh. But I was just jumping on a trampoline. Like, your knee shouldn't blow off. You know what I mean? Like, I just jumping on trampoline, just bang. And I was like, fuck, that tendon, I'm glad it went on the trampoline, because if it would have went in the gym, that's when guys wind up tearing two, right? That's what happens, is the one goes and then they shift.
Right. If you're under 400 pounds, or you got 2K loaded on a sled, it's like, man, that's going to be pretty ugly.
So I asked the surgeon, I said, hey, can you make sure you tell me what you see when you're in there? You know what I mean? Like, I want to know, like, I'm a bodybuilder, how's my knee? So in the post-surgery, when I went in a week later to talk to him and everything, he was like, man, you use that knee. he goes, I fucking, you wore that knee out. He's like, there's like, you ripped everything.
There's nothing left
in there. And he said that, but it was a good tear and a really good fix. And the tendon remodeled itself. So now on a scan, I've got like a big, thick white tendon now, instead of like a dark, fucking patchy, thin looking tendon. It's like
tattered tendon.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's like the good knee now. So yeah, it's fucked up.
How has your approach to training, how you approached it coming up, and then what you see in today's, because owning a gym, you see training happening in front of you all day, every day.
Yeah.
How has I know how the culture has shifted, and we talk about that with the filming and the social media and all that, but how has the performance aspect of training from like when you're in your heyday to like now, how does it compare?
Well, I'm very positive about it. I see a lot of really hard ass training going on. I mean, obviously at our gym, we're going to see a disproportionate amount of quality training, bodybuilding style training going on because, the number of bodybuilders we have and all that. But there's a lot of people that are into progressive overload at my gym. There's guys that have put on stacks of muscle. There's people that are growing, a lot of gyms, no one changes. Right. Yeah. But at our gym, I see people growing at our gym and doing shows and improving every year and that sort of thing. And the guys are strong now. I know everyone's taking more trend now and, all that sort of stuff, but guys are strong. Like I see a lot of young guys throwing up the 130 dumbbells and the 150 dumbbells and, that sort of thing. And, I see a lot of guys squatting 4 or 5 plates, like repping out, and I'm everyone's like working hard. And, the IG kids that come in and set up their tripods and then deadlift, like some of those kids are like skinny and they're pulling like 5 plates, like 6 plate deadlifts. They don't even look like they can squat 3 plates, it's, so there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on, in the gym. And I think a lot of people are training really hard. And, the same thing with the diet where they might be over analyzing, like over counting and over, recording. That sort of correction is also happening, like with the training, like, they might be looking too much into it, but they're putting the effort in to like try to find the best way. And, we crack jokes about, some of the funny shit they're doing, but they are in pursuit of finding something better. And I think I try not to be grumpy old man about that. You know what I mean? I try to think, hey, they're trying to find something better. And usually when you look for something, you follow the evidence. So yeah, we might think that thing they're doing is stupid. And guess what? Give them long enough, they'll think it's stupid too, because we know why it's stupid. And they just haven't figured out why it's stupid yet. They'll realize that the strength curve sucks and it doesn't load in the stretch. And it's so unstable that you can't load it effectively for hypertrophy. They'll figure it all out. So we don't have to, but the good thing is they're looking and they're trying shit and they're trying to figure out a better way to train. And, I love some of the people on Instagram. I don't want to start naming names because I don't want to name, not name certain people, but I see some really good content out there, and some of it's done kind of tongue in cheek, like, where they're sort of playing a role, which is cool, it's your branding and everything. But I like that there's people, giving out good information, and, I just think we did all this stuff on like fucking rumors. Rumors. Like, oh, I know someone who met this pro. What was he on? Oh, he says he was on, like, right. He says he does this many sets. He says he does this many working sets. And
then now you got an entire gym full of people that are doing exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. We were running on rumors, man. Rumors and legends, know.
Hey, there was something to it. I mean, like you said, you that era had guys that were walking around at a cool 3 bills, no problem. Where you don't really see that now. So,
do you think you were a lot more present in your bodybuilding career because you didn't have, like, I feel like today
Man, that's such a good question.
younger kids are counting the cost of like if someone told you, Ron Partlow, it's going to take you this long and this many second place finishes to get your pro card, would you have still done the whole thing the way you did because you loved it?
No, I had
Really?
I had absolutely no plan B. I see like Clarita's got that no plan B sweatshirt, right?
Yeah.
I remember seeing him launch that and I was like, that's fucking exactly what we used to joke about back in the 90s. But I like was just all in. I was like, I'm gonna be a bodybuilder. Well, what are you gonna do? I don't know. Be a bodybuilder. Something will come up. I don't know. Maybe own a gym or something. Like, you used to say that. And they'd be like, yeah, but what's your plan? I don't know. Just get out there. Just get out there, be bodybuilding, get involved, meet people, get sponsors, meet people from the companies. Who knows? That was it. Like, I didn't even give a fuck. Something will happen. Cause I guess I always had like this weird belief that if you just did what you love to do, then something would happen. At least you'd be able to pay your bills. Like, because if you have passion for something, there should be enough of a market to keep you at least, present. You know what I mean? But I wasn't like, we didn't have any distractions. I had no distractions at all. Like, I didn't give a fuck about anything or anyone else. Like, oh, you don't like my bodybuilding? Okay, see ya. Like, it was just 1000%. Like I would meet a girl and she'd be like, so you're a real serious bodybuilder? I'm like, yeah, 100%. That's all I do. She'd be like, oh. And if they didn't like it, that was, you know what I mean?
See ya.
Yeah, there was no bargaining or compromise at all. There was no like, hey, would you come with the family for a week in the summer? No, training. Like, it was, and I know we joke about it now, but that's how I was. Like, oh yeah, I'm not coming to your wedding. It's a week before my show. Yeah. Like, and I know, we wonder, oh, is that worth it and stuff? Well, I'm really happy how things turned out. So I can say it was, but then I'm like afraid to give that advice to people. I don't want to go giving my actual, what I did and telling other people to do that. Cause I'm like, oh fuck. That's like, but that's how I was. So maybe that was just my mentality of like, I have to do that stuff because I don't have any extra talent.
I don't think even saying that, like, you're like fearful of giving that advice, man. I don't think with the greatest sales pitch from the greatest bodybuilder of all time, you can convince someone or change someone into being that way. Like, the people that were gonna be that way are that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always, I've had people tell me, some of my close friends have told me that I was always like I don't dabble in anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if I hear a song and I really like it, I have to hear the entire album. And now I have to hear that band's entire catalog, and I have to start at the beginning, and I have to listen to everything that they've put out and hear how it's changed over the years. And I have to find out the names of all the guys in the band. What other bands were they in?
Right. What type of guitar is he playing?
Yeah. What's he playing? How's he set up? What's he doing? And I just, and I just rabbit hole on YouTube for like 45 minutes.
It's that all in or all out mentality.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna, there's no half measures. Like,
no. Yeah. So I do that with everything. Like, my girlfriend and I will watch a show and she'll be like, oh, that one actress is awesome. And then we're the type of people that we pull them up after.
Where was she born? What's her social security?
What movies is she in? Yeah. We do that sort of stuff too. So like, I'm like that with stuff. And, so I was like that with bodybuilding, like 100%,
I feel like we see it now. It comes through, like, just as like a follower and a fan of yours. We see it now and hear you talk about like the biking on the podcast, where it's like, man, you talked about there's times like you're out there 3 hours a day on this bike now. And it's like, man, like he's all in on this. Like,
yeah, like I'm wearing out tires and everything. Fucking
yeah, you were saying like one side, like one hand or like one side of your core is like more sore just from doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, there's some like awesome. It's the parallels are funny. And I don't really know, maybe they're not parallels, but they're just things you can lay over top both of the bodybuilding and the new hobby I have with the flat landing. It's repetition, consistency, dedication, going when you don't really want to go, but you talk yourself into wanting to go because you got to be in a good mindset to go, and you fucking go. And then the second you get there, you're glad you're there. And you're like, I can't believe I almost didn't come today. you know,
and it's just you.
Like it's the same conversation. It's just
the result of your effort alone. It's not a team sport. You're not relying on anybody else.
Purposely go when there's no one around. So there's no one cheering you on or fucking anything. You want to be completely alone because you're going to just fucking fall down on your bike for an hour straight. No one, anyone watching you. And you might pull something off like, you know, fuck, I hope I got that on camera, you know, like, and just all that stuff. And it's just like bodybuilding in a lot of ways, you know, just, you know, no one cares.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Work harder.
Nobody cares. Yeah. You know what I mean? And also it's very like, you know how like people don't understand how hard it is to be a good bodybuilder. So they don't appreciate it. Like people who like, you know, Phil Heath in a t-shirt in his prime could walk through a mall and certain people would just look at him and be like, some juice head.
Yeah.
Right. They just like, some whatever. There's a million guys like that. See guys like that at my gym all the time. Big arms, whatever, you know, like they wouldn't appreciate it because they don't realize how hard it is. That's also something that Flatland has in common. People don't realize how hard it is. So they see it and they're like, oh, whatever, some guy on a bike, you know, and people walk right past, like, you know, see videos on IG, like the best guys in the world doing tricks that literally took them like 25 years of riding to be able to do. And these people are walking by just staring at their phones.
Right.
And you just say, yeah, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. No one gives a fuck, you know? So it makes me laugh though. You know, don't take yourself too seriously on your stupid little bike.
Right. Because to that guy and everyone in that world, it's like that's earth.
Yeah, it's like so.
And then Susie walks by. She's on her way to the park, and it didn't even catch her radar.
Like, didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny how it works, but I guess you know, I sort of like things that aren't appreciated by everybody. Sure. You know, I don't know. Yeah, I was kind of liked weird things, like, you know, I was always into like, you know, I was always really excited when I knew about a band and other people didn't. I was like that. I was like, you guys haven't heard of these guys yet? And they're like, no. And then
you're an original.
Yeah.
Hipster.
Oh yeah. Before the word came around. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like just from this, you know, the last hour we've talked that you just had fun your whole bodybuilding career and you never really took it so serious that you stopped having fun.
That's actually a good way to, that's actually true. I enjoyed the whole thing. Like I always had fun going to the gym. I can't remember, like, you know, I've talked to a lot of guys. I mean, everyone's got a complicated life and you know, life is difficult. And I remember talking to lots of really good bodybuilders, like guys that were serious. And I'd be like, oh, how you doing? And I'm like, good. Haven't trained in a few months. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, I just, you know, I was just so tired of it after the last show. I just took a break and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And like, and I remember just being completely blown away. Like, oh, what the fuck? How? And, you know,
what are you doing like, with yourself?
Yeah. Like what is there even to do? Like, do you just sit in a chair for the whole day? Like,
right.
You know, how do you eat? How do you, what do you eat 3 meals? Like what even, you know, like just the inability to not, you know, live the full lifestyle 100% because I wanted to is the main thing, you know, just always loved it. You know, I just thought it was crazy that we could try to make our body do something so wild. You know,
we talked about it on this show where, you know, in simple terms, you're trying to add more human to your frame. Like it's a ridiculous process.
Yeah. You're just like, you just something about it. You just want to see how far can you take it, you know? And just the structure, you know, the structure is, you know, those years in my 20s and 30s, now I'm much, you know, if I could go on holidays for 5 days and not have any structure and I'd be fine, you know, I would wind up, you know, finding a structure, but but back in my 20s and 30s, I think I was far too obsessive and far too, I don't know. I think if you would have put me in a different lifestyle, like let's say make me a hockey player, right? That's still an athlete. It's still a sport. You still have to work really hard, but there's way less structure because you kind of can eat whatever you
There's
want.
A break. Every other
There's a
sport, it's like
break.
you go to practice or a game for 3 hours and then you leave it.
You leave. And I don't know if I would have been able to handle that. I might have, I don't know. Bodybuilding kept me out of trouble.
Same.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding kept me out of trouble. I would have been chasing girls way worse. Like I would have been going to the bars, having more fun and, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it kept me out of trouble for sure. And, I don't know if I would have wound up like doing drugs and that sort of stuff. I mean, I had my fun in the 90s and experimented and went to some parties and stuff, but I'm not sure if I would have wound up like, that route or anything, but I'm a pretty extreme person. And I like to do things that are like different from other people and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know how that would have manifested, but I think bodybuilding, helped me out in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside, it sure looks like it set up the rest of your life. I mean, it's not like it's not like it ended in a vacuum at 39 with that quad tear. It's like you parlayed that entire career into the gym, into coaching, into a podcast. So it's like I've heard you and Dusty talk about it, where it's like you guys are long retired, and it's like you go to expos now, and it's like your line is longer, and you're more seeked out than ever before. Super
like grateful for that. That was, that's a product of years and years of just being in the industry, but also too, like, my old boss at Mutant, I was an endorsed athlete for like 5 years. And then, he said, well, like, how many more, contests are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, another year or two tops, I think. And he's the one that said, well, why don't you move out to Vancouver? I'll create a job in the marketing department. You can work at the company. And then when you're done competing, you're at the company still, you're in the brand, you're helping control the marketing, blah, blah, blah. And you're still in the industry. You're still traveling. We still take you to the trade shows, blah, blah, blah. And so that was like, sort of like, really helped my mind shift as to get prepared for the end anyways. So I was, I'd already done all that. I moved out here, bought a new condo out here, started working at the company. Then I got my pro card. Then I tore my quad. Then I opened my gym. So Mutant was a huge factor in helping me set things up for after bodybuilding. Like without Mutant and all the opportunity they gave me, I wouldn't be out here. I wouldn't have the gym, and all that sort of stuff. So, that's just, they've been a huge component of helping me to like, make the transition, and then the gym got busy enough in 2019 that I quit the job.
Sure.
And went back on an endorsement contract. So
hey, we're gonna keep you around. So
yeah, well, the joke is I walked into my boss's office and I said, hey, I gotta leave, but you're gonna keep paying me. And he looked at me and he goes, I knew this was coming. Yeah. And he said, the gym's getting busier, eh? And I said, yeah, I gotta go. And he goes, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I've written up a contract for myself.
Yeah.
Because I also did athlete relations, right? So I already did up my own contract and I just showed it to him and he said, yeah, that looks good. So we signed it and that was it. So it was just kind of a crazy amount of support from Mutant since 2010. Just nuts.
But you earned that though, like with the way that you've carried yourself and who you were, like both in and out of the gym. So again, it's like one of these things where, it's an opportunity. It's a great sign of loyalty, all these things, but like, you were saying like you wouldn't look back and necessarily change anything. It's like all of that and who you were then has led to what you get to be now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking like, everyone, sometimes you joke around with your buddies like, oh, I remember when I was, living in a basement suite, and I remember when I was driving a $500 car and all that sort of stuff. And I actually remember sleeping on the floor of my apartment. I didn't have a bed. Like I remember moving to Edmonton in 1999. I met my best friend there. Like we moved there to live together because, we'd both been traveling and we were like, let's meet in Edmonton. We'll live together. We got an apartment, moved in. I didn't have a bed. So I just put like a couple blankets on the floor and I was just sleeping on the floor. And I slept on the floor for 3 months.
Damn,
And
Ron, why,
yeah,
man?
I don't know.
Jeez.
I guess got used to it. I got used to it. And I remember thinking like, I'm just kind of like used to this. And I was sleeping good. And then I remember, after I'd like, worked a couple of months and saved up some money, I went and like got like a cheap bed.
Yeah.
But I just think like I was happy that whole time too. I was sleeping on the floor. I was happy. My workouts were fucking good. I was smashing it. We were training at the best gym in Western Canada back then. It was awesome time. Like those were like some of the best times. We'd play we'd stay up and play Xbox at night, playing the first Halo, fucking train at the gym, play the first Halo, sleeping on the fucking floor, like.
It's funny that that's a period that you look back on and like remember fondly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. But yeah, I just always was happy. Bodybuilding was something that I enjoyed, and I felt like it added to my life and gave me something to strive towards. And I also like, how they say, some people are afraid of putting work in towards something because they think, well, what if that turns out to not be my thing? It's a waste.
Right.
What a waste, I wasted all that time. Like, some people, maybe they'll go to university for 3 years to get a degree. And in the end of their third year, they realize they don't like their major. And so they'll switch majors. It's never a bad thing. It's learning, like an example, like school learning is never a bad thing. So, they've got lots of studies too. Instead of looking at it as a waste of time, you invested a bunch of time to learn all these skills that you can just change directions with and accomplish this really quick, So I always saw like bodybuilding, I'm not wasting my time. Even if this doesn't work out, I can just take this and just put it on something else. And I guess I was kind of counted on that.
Yeah, you could take contest Ron and stamp it on business Ron. And there you go.
Yeah, you have to, like if I got to, I can Well,
that's a skill set that, you're not going to learn in a classroom or at a university. It's like, that's a skill set that you developed over 20 years in bodybuilding. And now, unbeknownst to you, you step out into a different arena and now it's a competitive advantage in business in a different field.
Yeah, it is, 50 grams of carbs and, 2 hours of cardio, if you can do that, if you can do that for a couple weeks at a time, you can handle like, some crazy things that come down owning business or, dealing with that sort of stuff. Yeah. So you just try to, think, hey, all that hard work was an investment of some kind.
Yeah.
It's never a waste of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we're a little bit past an hour. I know you're a busy man. So
hey, I appreciate
we really appreciate you having on. Before I let you slide, I'm not letting you off that easy.
No.
I try to make it a habit to ask the guests that we have on as a final question. So I'd like to hear from you. What is the best piece of advice and the worst piece of advice that you've ever been given? Could be completely unrelated to bodybuilding.
Best piece of advice and the worst piece of advice I've ever been given. Well, the best piece of advice I ever heard was something that Jimmy Page told Jack White.
Okay.
He said, Jack, don't ever let anybody tell you how to play your guitar.
Okay. Love it. That's a good one. Shout out to the legend Jimmy Page for passing that down.
Yeah. Damn. I think the worst piece of advice I ever got was, you have to go to university. I was like, I just don't think it's happening. Yeah. I did go to college for a year and a half, but I never finished it. I remember I had a lot of people telling me, you have to. You're just going to turn out, you'll be a loser.
A loser. Yeah. We talk about it on the show all the time.
You're out of high school, like right away. What are you going to do? Like at the end of this summer, you're in university. Like that's what you got to do. And I remember just being like, it didn't even cross my mind. It was funny. Yeah. I still think like sometimes that, now there's some like, some actual real stats about going to college and stuff like that. It's not what it used to be. Right. So yeah, you gotta go to school. That's probably the worst
Especially
test.
like, not to get off the rails, but like here in the States where it's like, you're going to pay 20K a year or whatever it is. And then it's like,
At
okay,
least.
you come out with a degree and then what? You're going to go work at the movie theater? Like, good
Yeah,
luck.
yeah.
Yeah, that's some
You
good
know
advice.
the best advice ever got is from Chris Aceto, and he's got 2 rules. And the first rule is there are no rules.
Right.
And the second rule is see rule number 1. And that's probably the best advice. Working with Aceto, it destroyed all of my hangups that I had about what you think you have to do.
Interesting.
Right? Because there were shows where we wouldn't do each of those things, like I just remember all the time he just, it was always different,
Give me an example. Like, what's one thing that you thought that you must do?
Well, like,
didn't do with Chris.
Well, I mean, with Chris, I let go of morning cardio. He was like, I don't care. He's like, just do it. I don't care.
Do it whenever. Yeah.
Because the way my schedule was, I was working at night, and then I had to train in the morning because I was working at night. So I was like, well, it doesn't make sense to me to get up, do cardio, eat one meal, and then train, because my workout will suffer. It makes more sense to me to eat, train, and then worry about my cardio later in the day. And he's like, yeah, fine. He didn't give a fuck. And so, and like just destroying each little like rule one at a time, like, he just showed up at my room one time and he's like, you're a little flat. And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he comes back with 2 giant cinnamon buns. And he's like, eat both of these and drink a liter of water. So I ate these 2 giant cinnamon buns. They were like 1,000 calories each. And I drank a whole liter of water. And then we just sat there and chatted for like 20 minutes. And he goes, okay, let's see you. And I start posing. He's like, filling up already. And then he comes back in half an hour and he's like, holy fuck, this is awesome. Like, like it just, some of the things he did, like, were just funny. I remember walking down the hallway eating that cinnamon bun, and I walked past a bunch of other competitors. And this is like 2 hours before.
They're looking at you like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Just stuff.
Just all kinds
of wild stuff, I remember Chris, like, he's like, oh, I just want you to take a little bit more diuretic. And I was like, well, how much? And he goes, can you like break a diazide? So I like broke one and it kind of shattered. And he goes, okay, send me the picture. So I sent him the picture and he circled one of the pieces and he sent me the picture back. And he says, take that piece. And I was like, okay, it was like
awesome.
probably about a quarter of a diazide. I took that and it was like great. Actually, I was great at that show.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like all these rules,
Sure.
like people that write out their peak week ahead of time.
Bad.
Like
Bad
10
news.
days out, they got their peak week, Tuesday, eat this, Wednesday, eat this, Friday. Like, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. Chris tells me every day. Like,
if you asked him, I've heard him in interviews where people are like, hey, Chris, what do you think we're going to do in the morning? He's like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Pictures. Yeah. He used to tell me meal 1 will probably be the same. Right. So at least he can eat. Like meal 1's the same, but after that, we don't know. So, yeah.
It's funny. Your partner in crime came on our show. Dusty was our first guest. And I asked him that. And his best piece of advice was also from Chris. And Chris told him, like, I guess in regards to like, coming back from being in the hospital and everything, he said that Chris told him patience is for losers.
It's gold.
That's fucking Chris.
Yeah.
Patience is for losers.
Yeah. I've been using that one a lot ever since.
Oh, fuck. See, I didn't even that's how many good ones he's got, is that I didn't even heard that one.
Man, we could have you back on just for stories with Chris, I feel like.
Oh man. I remember another one of my favorite ones. I said to him at once, I said, I'm pretty full. Do you think I need to eat carbs? Because I was, how everyone's had that thing where you think you look pretty great without carbing up.
Right.
Right. And you're like, fuck, I look pretty full. Like, I think I should eat some carbs. And he goes, you're fake full. You're just salt and androgens.
Man, he needs to have his own merch line with some of these phrases on shirts.
If you take a half a diazide, there'll be nothing left to you. There's no real glycogen there. And I was like, oh, I see. Like his funny way,
that
like
means
probably not a scientifically accurate statement, but it makes sense in the head of a bodybuilder who's depleted. You're like, he's right. There's no real carbs in there. If I dehydrate, I'll just,
yeah,
that's just how he thinks. Right. But just simple things that, that's not going to work. It's funny.
Yeah.
Patience is for losers.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
awesome.
for that, guys.
Well, really appreciate you having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
And I think I speak too for the whole bodybuilding community. I'm going to take that liberty and do so. And thank you for all the content that you and Scott and Dusty do. I mean, that channel is a bloodline for a lot of bodybuilders that I know. So I can only imagine the impact across the industry you guys
super happy to be a part of it. And we want everyone to know we're trying to make the show better. It's real difficult because it's none of our primary things. Like, there's other people where the podcast is their primary thing. So, this is like my fourth thing on the list I got to get done. So we are trying to make it better. I got a new ring light. I think I look a little better. I got the background.
You're looking sharp. Yeah. Background looks good. Mic is a good setup.
I got a Mutant flag coming. It's going to be really good. So working.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
We see it and we appreciate it. So thanks for everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.